Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a good friend of mine and a super special guest, Terry Hellenbrand. He is from Wisconsin, so don't hold that against him. But Terry he's got a unique story. I love my conversations with Terry because they always make me think, and it always engages me into why are we doing what we do? And Terry is very focused and passionate about what he does. So today I wanted to get Terry on the call or on the podcast and just have a really quick conversation because he has a unique background, not unique background, but maybe different than a lot of people. So I want to bring that into it, and I want to bring his passion for IBC and for what he does. And his backstory, his story is very unique. It's unique to him, but as you listen to it, it's probably not going to be unique to you, the listener, because I can imagine everybody has a way to relate to what he has to say. So I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Terry. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So tell me just a little bit about, again, I know your backstory, but let's have the listeners understand where you come from, because again, you haven't been in the insurance game for 30 years. You came at it at a little bit different pace, a little bit different time in your life. So what I'd really like to capture is why IBC is so passionate to you, why you're so passionate about IBC, as well as how are you serving people and what makes you different. But I really want to understand kind of your background, because I think that's what makes it so interesting. So again, I know that you had, and anybody that listens to this and anybody that knows Terry, I should say, knows that he family's in the water conditioning business, that the name Hellenbrand is synonymous to water conditioning in Wisconsin. Is that fair to say, Terry?
Yes, it is.
So maybe start out, just tell me a little bit about your when you're growing up with your family, the business, your take on business, because especially your family business, I think there's a real interesting story there. So,
well, thanks, Wade, for having me here, and I'm glad I can share this with everyone. So my parents started a water conditioning business in 1967. At that time, they had 5 children, 4th grade. I was in 2nd grade, 1st grade, kindergarten, 1 in diapers, and 4 years later, my mom had twins, a boy and a girl. Wow. And usually everybody sighs when I tell them that, like, oh my gosh, But I literally watched my parents, work their butts off, right? And they would make some money and put it back in the business, make some money, put it back in the business, make some money, put it back in the business. And finally, they really made some money and they put it back in the business. And they made a solid foundation so the business could be successful. They gave up a lot of things, but they knew they had to lay a good foundation. At one point, all 7 of us children worked in the business or another, stuff like that. So I literally loved it. I loved working in there during summer vacation, school vacation, and all that, and going with my dad. My dad was a great mentor. He taught me things, and he let me fix water softeners on service calls with him and so forth. And when I was 16 years old, he's all right, now go make the company some real money, because I had a driver's license and so forth like that. So I've always thought outside the box. In school, I always challenged my teachers and why. And the reason I'm pointing that out, because I'll get to that in a little bit. But if I was going to school in the last 20 years, I guess they probably would have put me on some type of drugs, which I just question things and stuff like that. So my parents, they did one day my dad came home, my mom said, and the boys wanted to grow the business bigger. So my mother said, there's a lot more mouths to feed. We don't let them grow bigger. They're going to have to go somewhere else. So while we were in our 20s, they let us start growing the business bigger. My older brother started running the company. Along the way, because of me questioning things and all that, I started working on because what was out there just wasn't very good and it was messy and stuff. So through trial and error, I had a notepad by my bed and I would write things down, wake up, write things down. And then my older brother telling me to quit wasting the company's money, it'll never work. That kind of spurred me on. And I kept doing this. And over a couple of years, I had some out and he caught me. One day he came in the back shop and I was working on it. And he said, what are you doing? You're wasting the company's money. Long story short, he went with me the next day, did some testing on equipment I had out there. And he goes, oh my gosh, this is working. So he got involved. We ended up patenting that product, which got our company to a lot more doors. We started selling to water treatment dealers as well as plumbing contractors. Again, our parents, unlike a lot of small businesses, they did a really good job in setting us up to be able to also buy them out. which unfortunately doesn't happen with a lot of small businesses, and things change. And pretty soon the ones that are really making the business work don't have a chance to buy it and so forth like that. So I really enjoyed doing all that. I sold out at the end of two. I sold out my share of the company, and then I was just taking some time off. I don't know.
So yeah, I have so how old were you when that was happening? So you're just sold out of the business and ready to take some time off.
So I was 49.
So 49 years old, sold out of your business. And that was the end of the water treatment business, as it were, correct?
It was. I had a no compete and all that and so forth. I really wasn't sure where I was going to go, but I have a firm belief in a higher power. I said to one of my friends, was actually a minister, I said, I'm curious the path that God's going to put me on, where my life is going to go. As you can see, I've always had a weight issue. So
if people are just listening, that's never an issue. I've always been able to hold down a rock and a piece of paper. So I want to go back to a little bit about your story, because there's some really interesting things that kind of came out of that story. One was a lot of people are deterred because somebody told them that they can't do something. It feels and it sounds like to me that you didn't let that get in your way. You didn't let conditioned thinking of how somebody said, oh, you can't do that, get in your way of thinking broadly and trying to find a better way in questioning things. Those are never an issue with you, correct?
No, actually, I went 180 degrees of the opposite way, I guess. I'm like, I will show you, and I literally worked my buns off doing it. And that's why I like small business owners and all that. I just have so much appreciation for them. Growing up in the family business, if there's a wall there, we're going to go around it, over it, through it, under it, whatever. And we're going to get we're going to get this job done. So for a better way to remove iron from water. And then I already talked to a lot of old plumbing contractors, drillers, pump installers, and I would pick their brains when I was talking to them. And I don't think they realized that I was doing that. And I would say, like in the old day, in older days and different things like that, things that weren't supposed to work on paper, like in science. We heard a lot about trust of science in the last few years. What I was doing was just trying things that weren't supposed to work, and then I would just rule some things out. But then by doing the service work on it, I realized that these things would work better than what most people thought.
Yeah. So that, and of course, that curiosity, and I think you bring out some really good points, is that most people, and I'll say salespeople, typically don't have a propensity to listen. It sounded like you say pick their brain, but you wanted to listen. You truly were curious and wanted to learn about the installers, what they're running into, what their problem is. When you talk to contractors today, I know just from the conversations I had with you, and you ask great questions because you're generally concerned about what's going on in their business and what's the stumbling blocks or the hurdles that they're running into, and helping them and understanding what those are and trying to find a solution to what those are as well. But you're never coming in with a preconceived notion of, hey, this is the solution. You're more about, hey, let's hear about what the issues are. Let's find out what your pain points are, and let's see if we have a solution for that. And that's something that you had at a younger age.
No, and we all make mistakes. And that's one thing that, I made lots of mistakes in my life, like boatloads. And hindsight's 2020. Mine might even be more than that, I think, that if I would have done things different and listened to my parents more and all that. But you're at where you're at. So how can we start wherever we're at? And I try to give people the benefit of the doubt today. Just because you tried something and it doesn't work does not mean you're a failure. It actually means that you're, like Thomas Edison said, you're one step closer to finding out what really works, things like that.
We don't call it WD-40 for nothing, right? It was not the old prize before this. So, and that's interesting because, again, your marketplace is obviously that contractor marketplace, right? That's where you're feeling at home, I would say, is right. Working with small business. I want to call them contractors. Let's call them small business people. It's interesting what we call small business people, because you could have $20 million in revenue and still be considered a small business person, right? So it's interesting what you call small business people, but it's where would it be safe to say you find a home there because you have an understanding? I mean, I would say you find a home there, but you have a comfort level there because you have an understanding what they're going through. You have an understanding of, yeah, I understand the struggle. I don't know your struggle, but I at least understand what it's. And everybody's trying to innovate. Everybody's trying to get bigger for the most part. And those are things that you've just gone through in the past.
No, and again, with my parents, I mean, we built a building, and I remember my dad saying, "This is the last building he's ever going to need to build," and then we ended up just like putting up this other big building, and then we added on to that and so forth, while they were still owners of the company. My dad, he would call in plumbing contractors and try to get them to sell their water softeners and other equipment. And he would say, "This is what I'll do for you." And out of the state, I would drive there and I'd start cold calling on plumbing contractors. They knew our name a little bit. And I'd say, "Here's what we do." And I remember one plumber said, he goes, "I don't want to keep switching water softeners. If you're still here in a year calling on me," because I said, "I'm in your area every 2 weeks." And I said, I'll switch to your company. Well, a year to the day, I walked into his office, into his shop, and I had a water softener on my shoulder. And I said, "Where do you want me to set this?" And he said, "I didn't order that." I said, "Yes, you did 1 year ago today." And he started laughing, and he became a really good customer, right? But I told him, I said, "I want people like you. I don't want you switching softener brands either. I want you to be a Hellenbrand, dealer, right? Plumber that uses our products strictly because we have a great relationship and all that." And that's how I build my business. Yes, I do like calling on contractors and trades. But I also, I call on farmers. I call on, other business owners. I have, one of my good contractors, and he does all kinds of things. And the way his brain works is like way, way faster than mine. He read the Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, in one night.
You bring up a really good point. It doesn't matter what trade people are in, or if they're farmers, or if they're plumbers, electricians, doctors, whatever it is. Everybody has the same problem, right? They all have this problem of you need money to expand. And then now are you dependent on somebody else to give you the thumbs up or thumbs down to make moves inside your business? I think about it just from my own perspective. The days I needed the bank are the days they said no. And the days you don't need the bank is the day they say yes. It's always the case, right? And so I think everybody, no matter what industry, what business they're in, runs into that same issue until they get to the point where they understand that if they save enough money, if they reserve enough dollars, that's when they can truly find the freedom that they're looking for. Especially as what I call small business person, or even an individual that's looking for that freedom, because now they're not obligated to go to the bank because that's the only choice they have. When people only have one place to go for a solution, that's not really a choice, right? Now, if you have a couple of different areas you can go, that's choice and that's freedom.
No, so as I told you, I'm the second of 7 kids. So my mom would sell encyclopedias at nights on weekends, and my dad would watch us kids. It's not called babysitting when it's your own kids, right? Yeah. But he would watch his children, and he would do bookwork and stuff around the kitchen table. So I was probably around 9 or 10, and I said to my dad, I go, "Dad," I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He goes, "Terry, I'm borrowing money against my cash value, my whole life insurance policy, because I can get money out of there because the banks won't lend me any money." So he was doing Nelson's infinite banking concept on a very little basis. And then he also said, "And then I can pay it back as I get the money." And I remember going, "Oh, okay." And I went off to do whatever a kid does at 9 or 10 years old. And then 2 other really important things that I remember is I would ride with him and we would do service calls and all that type of stuff. And we were going by a farm one day, and this farm was not a fancy looking farm at all. And he said, "If you ever do a service call there, it's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because those people borrowed your mother and I money when the banks won't." I went, "Those people borrowed you money?" And he goes, "Yes, they did." And then another time I was with him, and we had a really good plumbing contractor who, for us, if someone bought 5 or 6 water softeners at a time, that was like a huge client back then. And I'm with him, and he actually had an old Farmette he worked out of. And my dad said to him, "Yeah, Dwayne, I don't know what I'm going to do. The bank's called in my note. I'm going to come up with the money." And Dwayne said, "Jimmy, go put the water softeners down there in the barn and come back up here when you're done." And when we went back up there, he had the old checkbook where you had 3 checks and the stubs on the side. When he opened that thing up, and he had that open, and he's like, "Jimmy, how much money do you need?" And my dad, "What do you mean?" "No, Jimmy, how much money do you need? We've had that happen to us. We'll borrow you the money. We know you're good for it." I don't know how much money it was. I walked out of the room, and stuff like that. And when you really need help, like you just said, the banks, whatever, their hands are tied, right? And all of a sudden you need money and you can't get it. And that's, again, why I like going to business owners, because, sometimes we're so busy when we're super busy, right? Things are going good and we're making money, right? And all that type of stuff. And then we don't think it's going to turn bad, right? And then all of a sudden, when it does turn bad, what if we had done something a few years ago and started a process, this infinite banking concept? I just want to make business owners aware of it, because what happened to us, and I might be getting ahead a little bit, but again, our parents did a really good job in selling the company out to us. We had actually taken out whole life insurance policies on our parents, and our insurance guys were actually on our, they're on our board of directors. Okay. And we had taken out bigger whole life insurance policies in case they happen to pass away. Well, we still owed them money, right? So we could pay off the debt. And after a number of years, we had the business paid off. And our insurance experts actually said to us, you guys should just take those policies and cash them in, take the cash value and put it in the company. Okay, right? Okay, they're the experts, right? Well, after I became an infinite banking concept client, I'm driving down the business partners. You should buy these policies personally from the company and keep funding these. If the business needs money, you can loan the money to the business. Okay. And my mom and dad were going to die. My dad died 10 years ago. I miss him dearly. But we would have gotten this huge death benefit tax free. And then we could have even used that money to borrow to the company or so forth. So again, it's what we don't know, right? Why weren't you here sooner? I hear it not all the time, but I hear it a lot. You should have been here 20 years ago. And I think the same thing, because I didn't start my policies till I was in my early 50s. When my parents finally got a 401k and I was in my 30s, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. Now I wish we would have had the infinite banking concept instead of a 401k, because I could have done so much more with this, becoming my own banker.
Yeah. And it's such a strong statement there, right? So when you have the money, when you have control, and I heard a colleague of mine say this one time, he goes, money solves a lot of problems. Go ahead.
And my mom would always say, if you're not happy without money, you won't be happy with it either. And I agree with that. Because I see a lot of people that, quote, have made it, right? They have the money, but they're still not happy. So, and I also see a lot of people that, you know what, things happen in life and they don't have the money, but they're still happy. And that's, yeah, I have things going on in life and I have my moments, but I'm like, you know what, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
Yeah. And to that point, though, from a business standpoint, you think about having access to dollars at the time that you absolutely need it. That's what we're talking about. It's nothing else besides when everybody else is running and selling, you're standing and buying. I mean, how much, think about like in all the times that, think about today's environment where interest rates are rising and housing starts aren't there and just uncertainty. When somebody's sitting on a bunch of cash, how confident can they feel if they say, hey, our competitors are starting to sell out. We're going to wait until they're ready to sell at our price versus you being one of the other ones that are trying to sell out as well. When you have the money to either buy your competition or to, in your dad's case, think about how, that banking or that financing at the you and me level, how solid is that? I mean, that is like one of the greatest stories. I love when you tell that story because that's exactly what Nelson talks about in his book, is that lending and borrowing should be done at the you and me level, right? We do it with our own businesses, but we should also be doing it at the you and me level. Do we need the FDIC or do we need the government to be involved in those transactions? I don't think we do. I think, quite frankly, it's the opposite. The more we can get them out of there, the better off we're going to be, because it's based on character. It's not based on fear and greed like the banks, kind of what they experience or what they breed, I would say.
Oh, I agree. Those farmers and that plumbing.
And now it's going to come full circle because now that's what you do.
Right.
You have some people that you've borrowed money to and doing the same thing. You understand what Nelson was talking about in the book, and you're doing it at the you and me level as well.
No, I do. And I've loaned money to a couple of brothers that are not that I have two brothers that started their own water conditioning businesses, one in Wisconsin and one in California. And I was in a position where I could borrow their money, and people are like, you shouldn't borrow money to family. And I'm like, why not? You know what? And I go to an attorney and we do it on all that, but I have checks and balances and stuff like that. But both of them paid off their loans early and all that. And I saved one of my brothers. It helped him save his business because he was going through some things in his life that were not his fault. And it's like he had busted his butt in getting his business going.
And I think I would say I would ask if you agree to this, but it all starts with education. It all starts with education. Some people say you shouldn't borrow money to your relatives. Probably to a certain point, that's true, because have we educated them on how money works, right? Do they understand how money works? Do they understand the importance of borrowing money, paying it back? And if they don't, what does that look like? Quite frankly, I have a couple of family members that are really starting to get this. And we always hear this, hey, you're going to cut me a deal. You're going to cut me a deal on interest rates. And I would say, do you love me more than you love Wells Fargo? Would you rather give me the interest you would give Fargo, or even more? Quite frankly, if we're borrowing money from our own family, we should pay them at a higher interest rate, not a lower interest rate.
No, and I look back on my family business and stuff, and I would give my friends and relatives deals on water softener salt and all that. And after I read Nelson's book, I'm like, oh my gosh, I recommend it. For people out there, Nelson Nash and his wife.
And without him, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's right. That's right.
So one of the other things, too, that we talk about, obviously, we're talking about how money works and how to set up your own system and have a process for that money in a business. But in essence, what we're doing is we're setting up a secondary business or a third business or fourth business, depends on how many businesses individuals running, but we're setting up a separate, and it's our financing business. And just have an understanding that financing business has to be as profitable and as valuable as the water treatment business, as the install business, as the whatever part of your business that you have, right? So it has to all be just as profitable, and your money is one of the most valuable assets you have.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Sears is pretty much done with, but they still have their charge card, right?
Discover, I think, yeah.
And the Discover card. And that's once you understand this. I mean, my old business, we had over 20 vehicles. I mean, we would have been able to run so many vehicles through this idea and created more wealth.
But instead, those profits went back to whatever bank you're using at the time, for Wells Fargo, Chase, or your local bank, which a lot of people do. Which, again, I have no animus towards those local bankers, because they're just working for this corporation. But understanding that if you can take control of that function, the profit that they're going to take from your company can now be redirected back to your company. That could be the most valuable. The financing arm of your business or your farm or whatever you're working with can be the most valuable part of your whole operation, because it's very quiet, right? It's just interest.
Well, and you don't have all the issues to deal with: employees, overhead, vehicles, finding a place for. We started another location. We were based in it. We got it up and going and all that. But I look at starting your own banking business. It's so much easier, right? You use the cash that you have going through your life, through your business, and you can start your own financing company, really, different things like that. You become your own banker. You get to wear the banking hat.
I think Nelson, in his book, talks about the four characters in the play. If you think about that, this is talk about, you have the depositor, somebody that's putting the money in, the borrower, somebody's going to obviously borrow, the banker, who's the transactional people, and then also the bank owner, which all the profit flows to. If you can wear all those hats, think about how now you've created a closed system, so none of your money's leaking out and profitability isn't going out somewhere else.
Right. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use bank. I secured a piece of property up in northern Wisconsin where, I got the deal of the day on it. Things that happened in the economy, and the housing market went down and everything. And I had money in my whole life policies, and I got a note from the insurance company saying, yes, I have this much money in my policies. I gave that to the realtor, and boom, I didn't have to go to a bank to get a loan and things like that. My house up there, I took out a loan from a bank because interest rates were so low. I'm like, why would I not want to do that? Because now I can have my money in my cash value. So when another opportunity comes up, I can go after it. Yeah. That might be loaning it out to someone, or it might be buying another piece of property that I have the money there and I don't have to go to a bank.
Well, and that's what we talked about earlier too. It's about having choice. Mm-hmm. If you only have one place to go to get money, that's not having choice.
Right.
But when you have two or three areas where you can go get money, then you can say, which is the best one for me, considering the time, location. It's really about interest rate, quite frankly. Ease of use. I think about a couple of properties we purchased through the use of our policies. Way easier than trying to get approved, right? Get that last drop of blood from the bank, right? They want all this information. And just when you're ready to close, oh, by the way, we need one more piece of information, right? It's just, it's so painful. As I look at it now, it's like sometimes a 0.5% rate is not worth that kind of pain and agony.
I agree, because when I went through that loan process, I was so close to just chucking it in. I'm like, you know what? Because it's like you're almost done, and then they come up with another fee, right? It's not $20, right? I mean, the loan process is you can pay your loan back as you want to, right? And you can you set it up on your own schedule. And then if something happens where you can't make a payment, guess what? It doesn't matter, right?
That's what most people understand, is that they're in control of that function, right? So again, you have to be responsible. You can't be irresponsible. You still have responsibility to pay it back. But there's a lot of times I could tell stories about something came up. Okay, let's just suspend this loan payment for a couple of months until the cash flow of this property gets back where it needs to be. I don't think Wells Fargo wants that. It comes the second or third of the month, you know what they say? They're like a loan shark. Pay me. I don't care. Pay me. So that's always the case with those, where now you're in charge. Doesn't mean that you aren't going to pay that back, but now you have that flexibility because you're the one that's in control.
No, and actually, the way we teach it, you should pay yourself back with more interest. So we have our clients, most of them, right, on the process of actually they're going to pay that loan back sooner than what their schedule actually shows. You know,
but again, it's about flexibility. They have the option to do that. They have the option, but it's about education, right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody how to do it. Let's educate people. I know you're like this. Let's educate people so we can have that understanding of, okay, this is how interest works. This is how the process should work. Let's educate them so we're not the one that are the gatekeeper. They're their own gatekeeper. This is them becoming their own banker, not Terry becoming their banker.
That's right. That's right. But I'm here to help.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, one other thing I want to touch on. This is good stuff, Terry. We could talk for hours on this subject because we have so much in common when it comes to that. I think back to the concept of the insurance guy told you guys to cash out your policies. It leads me back to when I was growing up, and the banker told my dad to drop his life insurance premium. This was in the early 80s. Told him to drop his life insurance because the premium was expensive until he died 6 months later. How expensive was it? You guys are the same situation. You got the money out, but how expensive was that decision? So you use the term, the phrase, you wear two hats. Maybe speak to that just a little bit, would you?
I do wear two hats. I believe in being a part of the Infinite Banking program and strengthening business. We are very strong in the Water Quality Association, our trade association, because there was legislation and different things that would come up. And if you don't have the people and the money to fight that, all of a sudden your business can be in jeopardy, whether it's saying there's too much salt from a water softener discharging into the sewage systems and all that type of stuff. And I live in Wisconsin where we put salt on the highways all winter long. So it's kind of but I also wear the hand. They might have 1, 2, 3, or 4 children, and they don't even have any life insurance, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm not trying to be the Grim Reaper, right? But what if something were to happen to one of you, right? The husband or the wife, right? What if you did pass away, right? What is this going to do to your family? So it's like, I have an obligation to at least talk to them about that. And my solution, because a lot of people, they might not have the cash to do a whole life policy right away, especially if they're a W-2 employee and things like that, because the world we live in is spend, right? I want it now and all that. So the infinite banking concept, we try to get them to change it, start making new, better habits and so forth. But I will try to get them to do a convertible term life insurance policy so we have some coverage on it. Sometimes we can start out with a whole life policy, a little bit of it's in whole life. But even if we can't, it's like, let's get you some insurance coverage so in case something does happen. So a good friend of mine who was fairly new in the infinite banking world, I'd known him before, and he had his own business. He put up satellite dishes and he did security systems. And I mean, he was a busy guy. He's a small business owner, right? So what are they? They're busy. There are not enough hours in a day. And I believe if God made 26 hours in a day, it wouldn't be enough, right? It still wouldn't be enough, right? So he had done everything and all that. And he's, yep. I go, you need to get this signed. We need to get your application done, get it in and everything. And we were so close. He actually fell off a roof when he was putting up a satellite dish and he died. And I sit there, I'm like, had we got that policy enforced, how much better off would his wife and his children been financially? I mean, emotionally and all that, they're still grieving and all that type of stuff. And then another one, my neighbor, who's a small business owner, again, he was so busy. And one day I said, hey, what's up? What's up with, oh, haven't you heard? He had a heart attack. In fact, he had a bunch of heart attacks. They found out he's one of them guys that had those small heart attacks, but now he became uninsurable, and so forth. Not that he would have still been able to get a policy, possibly because it might have been found out, right, when they did his exam, right? which maybe would have saved him a lot of, being rushed to the hospital and his life in jeopardy and things like that. So I believe, my dad and mom had policies on us. When we were late teens, early 20s. What did I do? I cashed them in. So I said, remember the beginning, I said, I made some really bad decisions.
I was one of them.
I was one of them. And I love it when people say, no, I have he's got 3 children. He's got policies on all 3 children. One of my clients has policies on his children, and now he's doing them on his grandchildren, different things like that. Because he gets this, and he's starting these people out at such a young age and help them become their own banker, and they're going to teach it to them right as they go along.
Yeah. I think that's the key point, is like with anything else. And I'm going to bring this back to working with tradespeople, right? When people are given a tool, we use it to store money. We use it to save money because it's the greatest savings vehicle ever. And it's got some key characteristics. One is that it's guaranteed to go up each and every month. It's no loss provisions. You can borrow against it with no questions asked. I've gotten money within a day when I've had to borrow against it. So there's some key characteristics around the use of that. But to have an understanding of that, and it's about the education, is like, how can we expect people to understand how to use a circular saw if we've never educated them even how to plug it in and turn it on, right? But that's what happens. And so I love your approach, Terry, when you're talking to people. It's like, this is a lifelong journey. You've brought some people into the business. You've introduced the business to some younger people. Maybe we'll find even younger people, because we have to find that next generation that can continue with the education, because education is a process, just like IBC is a process. It's not an event, because it's like any other thing. Once you start your business, that's the beginning. Quite frankly, that's the easiest, right?
Change, 3M, right, is, I believe, Minnesota Mining and whatever, right?
Manufacturing.
No, they make sticky labels, right? So if you don't keep changing, right? Not that you have to change, but I was with a gentleman yesterday who has an auto body shop, and he's got 3 or 4 employees or whatever, and he's got those Polaris, those motorcycles that look kind of like a car or whatever.
Yep.
And there were 2 of them there. I'm like, are these yours? And he's like, yes, I'm trying to get these going because I want to rent them out. And he's in an area where they got rolling hills and all that. And the town he's in isn't a big tourist town, but there's one like 15 minutes away. He goes, I want to get them down there, and I want to rent them out because it would just be great for people to go out in the countryside, tour the countryside, right? What does that have to do with auto body, right?
Innovation. It's all about innovation, thinking outside the box.
Yeah. And go again. That's why, people, I just try to get them to read a book, watch some videos, learn about the infinite banking concept, because this is starting another whole business without, he's got those things are sitting there. They have not made him any money yet, the process, and it just works all by itself.
Exactly. So, hey, one thing I know, again, I'm just going to be a long conversation, but this has been fabulous, Terry. I really appreciate it. One thing I really I'm going to take this back to the contractor, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, my insurance guy can do that. My insurance guy can do this. And you and I have talked about this often enough, that just because somebody can sell you a product doesn't make them a craftsman in their trade. Just because my plumber doesn't make him the guy I want to wire my house.
Exactly.
So I think about it from that standpoint, and is that we want professionals. We want people that are specializing in their trade and that's where I see myself, I see you, is that you specialize in this idea called infinite banking, which uses a properly structured whole life insurance policy as the vehicle, as the tool. And you're that professional, you're that craftsman with that tool in that process.
Yes. And I believe in that. I've sold a couple of just whole life insurance policies. Okay. One was to a former employee of mine. She has her own company and all that. And she read the book, but she goes, I just want a life insurance policy. You sell me one. I'm like, you can go buy a water softener at Home Depot, Sears, Menards, whatever, right? And then all that, but the craftsmanship, is it going to be installed right? What happens when it breaks down and so forth like that? And someone going to be able to get those people to come and fix it for you and stuff like that. So we built our family business on service, whether the product was in warranty or out of warranty and all that. And that's what we need to take care of our clients. I want to be there for them. It's about relationships. I say that right out to people. I want to build a relationship with you. I don't want one of my gentlemen. I said, I'll be back, but I won't be here as often as I was in the last couple of months. You better show up or I'm going to come hunting you down. And he laughed. But that's how good a relationship we have. Now we can joke with each other. I'm not the insurance guy. I am an infinite banking person. Yes, how can I help? And that's the other thing with business owners. I have a young guy who's not even 30. He'll call. Okay. I said, you might want to check with some other people. Oh, I have. I just wanted to see what you thought about this. So things like that, and I appreciate that. But again, I'm not an answer all guy, but I have people like Wade. I have people like Fact and Financial that we have a team. And again, people like, how long are you going to be doing this? I'm over 60, right? So, but I don't see myself stopping for a long time because I enjoy doing it. But if something were to happen to me, there's still people that are on my team, right? That'll help take care of my clients and so forth like that. And I love young people getting into this industry. One, they should. I mean, it's not hard. I look at how hard some people work in businesses and all that type of stuff. It can be a really fun business. And the team that we have going now with Factum, I mean, if you can't have fun with that group of people.
I thank you. I appreciate those words. Here's this and says, hey, this Terry, I can relate with, because you're right. All the conversations are about the relationship. It is truly about the relationships, because if you don't have a solid relationship, trust and understanding and empathy for somebody, then you don't have a relationship. And that's where I would encourage somebody that hears this, says, I want to build a relationship with Terry. You can reach him. Terry, how can they reach you if they want to reach out to you?
And you can also call me Digger, because my nickname's Digger. And my mother called me Digger. And
we'll have to get that into the next conversation we have. So
put on my voicemail. Some people, I don't know if I'm calling the right person. That's me. Anyhow.
So we'll talk about the next time we get on the phone together, on the podcast together. So again, love the idea and the conversation around how can we be of service to those areas, that industries or areas of people that we have a lot of similarities with. And those people that want to think outside the box, want to learn, aren't stuck in this condition thinking that there's only one way to doing it. Because quite frankly, those aren't probably the small business people that are going to succeed. Because small business people typically go there because they have a better idea how to do something. All right. So I'm excited about that. Thank you again. And we will have you back on. We'll talk about the things we didn't get a chance to touch on.
Thanks, Wade. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.